We realized that our best customer was struggling with competitors, and they were like literally losing money in advertising and so on because they couldn't keep up on everything that was happening out there in the competitive landscape.
I'm excited to continue our conversation now, hearing more about your story. In part one, you shared around your product, Kompyte, which is a competitive intelligence automation platform, really helping those who are in product marketing or sales enablement easily track what their competitors are doing and automate that analysis. Curious though, going back a little bit before, maybe even 5 years, you didn't start in the US, and you shared at the end of our interview that you wish you'd know jump into the US, but what's your story? How did you get to where you are today?
Wow. So we started in Spain. We started this company because we had a company before, and that company was more like software development, online business, and so on, and like helping businesses sell online, right? And we realized that our best customer was struggling with competitors, and they were like literally losing money in advertising and so on because they couldn't keep up on everything that was happening out there in their competitive landscape, right? So we were looking for a solution to help this guy. Say, we need to help him. He's our customer, and he's complaining about this, and see if we can do something, and maybe we can find a software that actually, every company has competitors. There has to be something out there, right? There was nothing. So this is how we said we should build something, because it's not that there are going to be less companies, and we started the software, right? And we started building the software, and initially there is a playbook, especially when you are in other, let's say, startup ecosystems. There is a playbook that at that time said that you have to rock it in your country, and then you can go globally internationalize, right? And I believe that this playbook was copy-pasted from the US. And it's like, yeah, if you are in the US, you start in your country and then you go globally, right? But if you are out of the US and your country is like, less than a 10th part of the US, your market is not that big, right? So, and all your neighbors are speaking like 10 different languages, and that's a mess, right? And this means 10 languages is 10 cultures, and that's cool. But the moment there is also another thing that we learned with the time, that software categories tend to start, in the US, except for some other from very exceptional cases. But the majority of big software categories have started in the US, and they expand to other geographies after that, right? So what we did, we found this by accident. So we sent some emails to the wrong people, and they replied, and they became our customers. So
simple as that.
And then what we did is we repeat the process, right? So we sent thousands of emails to US companies, and we started to grow like crazy. And after that, at some point we had like very big logos using the software, and that granted us, being accepted in 500 startups in the acceleration in San Francisco, while in Mountain View. So we went to 500 startups, and then is when we kind of like learned all what was pending for us to learn, or like, hey, this is what the game is about. Welcome to the Silicon Valley. And then, we started working in the night. We already started before, like, closing all the deals, working in the nights in Spain. We continued to do that. We built a team in Spain to do that until we let's say we were large enough to raise funds and move to Austin. We had to pick a place where we wanted to build our teams, and we had like many conversations with people in the US, and more people was recommending us Austin, Texas. And I came to the city, I fell in love with the city, and here we are.
I love it. And you still have the offices back in Barcelona?
Yeah. So we have like all our engineering teams and so on, and product teams, they are in Spain. And then, all our go-to-market teams, this is like sales, marketing, customer success, and, the headquarters, and the rest is in Austin. Yeah. So everything is in Austin. But yeah.
I got it. It's a fascinating story to kind of hear. Almost, you started, and then you go through the typical startup journey in San Francisco, and
yeah. So it's like, you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you've seen it, and then when you see it, it's like, okay, that is what it is, right? So we have to do it this way.
Did you self-fund at the beginning, bootstrap? Did you get VC funding, equity?
We get very early money, like, friends, fools, and family, and so on. I think we were lucky at this point that the fact that we were tracking competitors, that sounds sexy, right? So, and that attracted that kind of interest of like a bunch of like angels and friends, fools, and family back in Barcelona. That kind of like helped us start, and we had like good traction when it comes to like being known in the local ecosystem, right? It's not that much of like an ecosystem. It is a great ecosystem, but it's not that there are like millions of companies or hundreds of thousands, right? So everyone knows each other, and we did some good progress there. And the moment we ended in 500 startups in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, that also helped increment this feeling of like these guys are doing great things. So we were very lucky at the beginning that we had the support of these initial investors. Yeah.
Any thoughts on what a mistake one could make when you're seeking funding? Any tips or thoughts around that you could share?
Seeking funding, that's never easy, right? It never gets easy. That's it. It is always more complicated and always more difficult to actually seek for funding. I think the one thing that I would recommend is try to always have a profitability plan in mind, right? So it is not that complicated. We were let's say in this case, in this sense, we are also lucky that we have a significant amount of the team that it's in areas that are not that extremely expensive as could be, let's say, San Francisco, right? So that helps keep these companies, and that shortens the time or shortens the requirements for profitability. So if I had to recommend the founder something, is like raise the minimum you can raise at the beginning. I know this is hard at sometimes because it depends on what family you come from, or it depends on what have you done before, right? And I always had in mind, or always have a plan to be profitable the moment, because there are two stages before making money and after making money. Before making money, who cares? You're just burning money, right? So it's like, it has to sound sexy, it has to be cool, and you're just burning the money. That's the reality. You're not making any money, right? The problem is when you start making money, everyone starts measuring. At least that's how it works in B2B, right? The moment you cash a dollar, the moment you start reporting MRR or ARR, everyone is going to be looking at you, right? And they will look at this number, and no matter what story you explain, they will look at the number and how this number is going, right? And that is the only thing and if this number is growing, everything is going to be fine. If this number is not growing, it doesn't matter how cool or what price you have done, it's not going to look that great, right? And the reality is that there are ups and downs, and there are all sorts of moments. So get ready for the time when the number is not going up and you are doing great, because you will be the only one that will believe that. And if you stick with this and it's going to get back to growth, it's going to continue growing, and you're going to show everyone that you're doing great progress, right? But that could mean that you have to be profitable. So seek for profitability as soon as possible. And this doesn't mean being profitable. This means being able to be profitable.
Powerful insight right there. You talked about being able for marketing, growing. Any tips when it comes to scaling, especially in today's world where it's difficult to get attention? Everyone's overloaded with constant distractions. Any tips on how to get attention, attraction when it comes to B2B?
People. That's how that's what we learn, right? So there is also a path in the journey of an entrepreneur that when you start a company, you build the software, you and your co-founders, you build the software, you sell the technology, you run the ads. It's a bunch of people that are actually doing all the work, right? And that works. And then at some point you realize that you're no longer coding that software. You're not running these ads. You're not in all these sales calls. Maybe in some sales calls, but you're not doing the sales. Not most of them. So what is it about? And how is that the better the company goes, the less things the less of these things you're doing, right? Like, yeah, this is about people. So scaling is once there is a market, the market is spotted and the vision is clear. It's all about finding the people that will actually do this, right? Will actually help execute this vision, right? And it's all about culture and execution and having the right people, making sure it's the right fit for the culture that actually needs to be set to succeed in this industry or in this business. And the most complicated thing is finding the people and finding the right people and keeping the right people, right? But the moment this happens, it's magic, because it's there are people that can do marketing way better than you have never done. There is people that are, there are people that can do sales better than you've ever done. There are great developers that can develop software way better than you have ever done, right? And your mission as a founder is hire them. That's it. Hire them, like this, and guide this team and protect this team and guide this team. That's it.
Is there any common mistakes that you have seen are made when it comes to hiring?
A lot. We didn't actually have an actual culture code until maybe like 2 years ago, and that is something that we sometimes regretted. So that I think we, again, because you're doing all the work and you're used to do all this work, we all knew there is people that we love to have in this team, and there is people that they are great people, but they're not a fit. And it's not their problem, it's our problem. We failed because we didn't identify that some people could not be a good fit in the company, right? And the moment you are hiring someone that is not a good fit, it's not their fault, it's your fault, right? And if you don't know what the fit is, then it's your fault. And that's very important. So then we kind of like roll back here and say, like, let's build a culture code. Let's say what are the things we're gonna be looking for, and let's just stick with this. And this means discarding a lot of candidates, kind of like on an almost scientific manner. Like, it's like, we're looking for this and this is not here.
Beyond the resume, what methods do you use to assess the potential of a candidate?
One of the methods that worked pretty well for us, kind of like we're not applying it at 100%, but I'm trying to remember the name of that book that actually was helping us assess that. There was like an HR book that was helping us identify what were the skills that we wanted. I'm happy to share it with you after. I don't know. Yeah. I read like
we can post it later.
But we use a methodology that actually says, we have like a scoring of like soft skills, and then we assess these soft skills during the interview, and we get more than one person to validate them. And let's say, if we need someone to be at a certain point, or let's say we need someone to be very good at negotiation, or we need someone to be very good at stress management or something like this, then we're not hiring if we don't see this clearly, right? And this doesn't mean, and sometimes I'm looking for things that I am not, right? And it is, that's what it is, because this person is not going to be the CEO. This person is going to be another thing in the company, which is probably going to be even more valuable. And we need this skill, and we're looking for this. But soft skills are very important. We tend not to, we look at the resume, what has this person done before, and it is not always a guarantee that it's going to work. So we assess this, and we match especially the main values of our culture code, right? And if in our culture code, being a team player is the top one thing, and we have this described, right? Like, we're talking about transparency, about honesty, about commitment. And if we at some point detect that this is not going on, we can move forward.
Having that team, the excellent team, allows you to do so much more. So when you, coming back to the conversation around expanding, especially expanding into new markets or new countries, going from Spain to the US, is there anything you think that people should consider or need to consider when expanding into
a lot, especially when you're hiring, right? So So when you're expanding to the US, I mean, first thing for European founders, the US is not about speaking English; it's about the different culture. It's not only about speaking English. There is a complete different culture here, and even if we're all in the Western world and kind of like we share a lot of things, there are a lot of differences, a lot of them, and this means this is exciting.
I'm curious, like what would there be like top 3 things like that you noticed?
I don't know. I mean, there is a list of these. We could spend like, I don't want to point like top 3 things because we're gonna fall into topics now, and this is not what I wanted to do. But even like the words we use, even in Europe, depending on where you are in Europe from, that completely changes. So a Spanish person with a German person are completely different, right? And you cannot even compare that. And then you add an American, it's like, okay, this is like 3 different worlds, right? But still, the main thing here is not only this. It's, listen, there's gonna be like, I like how one of my friends described that. So listen, there are 3 distances here. There is the physical distance, which means different working hours. So there is the cultural distance, and there is the language distance, right? And these 3 things exist there. So when you wake up in the morning in the US, guys in Europe have already been working for like 4 or 5 hours, right? And if you email a guy in Europe in the afternoon, this guy is already sleeping. And it also works vice versa, right? So the energies of the team are different, and you need to balance this. You can leverage this. There are lots of ways to leverage this. So you can have your engineers to deploy software while people in the US is sleeping, or it's just like most of our customers are sleeping, and they don't have to work in any special working hours because it's a working hour, right? So a lot of upsides. There are different cultures. This means that they see things differently. The concept of what's right and what's wrong is different. It's slightly different, right? And what is accepted and what is not accepted, and how would you say hello, or how would you start a conversation, or how would you write an email, it's completely different. So you got to train these teams on this. These teams have to know what to expect and what is normal. And the fact that someone is not talking to you as you are used to being talked to doesn't mean that, it means that maybe they don't speak your language that well. And it also means that the way they are doing it is the way they would speak to their family, to the people they love. So it's not bad, right? But you need to know that, because you may feel this is rude, or this is unpolite, or this is whatever, right? And these things happen, and you have to train the team on this. But the good thing is, like, then you have multiple points of view, and when you have multiple points of view, you are also in a better position to empathize with like any sort of customer or any sort of people out there. So if you leverage this, you can export this. So there are a lot of stuff to consider when doing this. But the main thing is like there are going to be different cultures. It's like different culture sets, different mentalities, and the difference in the time in the working hours and the time zones is also important to keep in mind.
I can imagine your cultural awareness and intelligence has definitely increased to be able to have to look at multiple angles. That initial outreach, I imagine there's a lot of entrepreneurs and companies that are wanting to either get into the US, or those who are in the US are looking to get out. Those initial emails to get, you started to send a bunch. Any tactics or thoughts you can share that made it work well, and any lessons learned when it comes to that?
Well, we broke all the playbooks, right? And and that's it. So normally you don't have to go outbound. Normally you don't have to go outbound until you have a very clear target that it's going to grant you an exceptional reply rate, which I don't know what exceptional reply rate stands for anymore, because but you definitely was like, it is, let's say, after all this journey, when you should start doing outbound, and you gotta go like target by target and making sure that we use outbound to find the market. So the way we do it is we swipe the markets. We send the same amount of emails to every different industry and company sizes. So we broke the entire market in like a matrix of industries, company size, and we send the same amount of emails like, thousands of emails to every one of them using multiple domains and, all of tactics that you can imagine. But guess what? We didn't have the fucking dollar. So sorry about that. We didn't have any dollar. And we had to do something, right? And we had the clue that there was a market out there. So we tried the market, and then we find some spots where we had higher reply rates. And we sold these companies. And this is how we got initial traction. There is one thing that is like, if you try to sell everybody, you may sell to a lot of people. This doesn't mean they're going to be your customers or your best customers today. So there is a consequence of this, which is like many of them churned. But then we'll learn another thing, which is like, who are the guys that don't churn? Now, it is very hard to explain to everyone out there that you are churning customers on purpose. At the beginning, when you have no money and you're running out of money and all this stuff, it is very hard to explain this. Because even if it works, it is very hard to explain. It's like, so you're telling me, because remember, even if you have $2,000 of MRR, they're going to look at the MRR, anything else, right?
And you're like, no, this is part of the process.
When you are like $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, selling small subscriptions is still at that time, having a bunch of customers and these guys churning like crazy, but some of them not churning, and you're looking at who is not churning to double down. No one is going to trust in you, right? And then suddenly you cut the losers and you stick with the winners and you start growing like this. And then it's when, oh, okay, that was working. But in between, no one will trust you. But the way we did it was like this. It was like we use outbound to find the market. Yeah. To kind of like validate what the market was, which is like what you shouldn't do at home anytime.
That's really insightful kind of trajectory, and also knowing that if people they're looking at the MR, they're going to say, "What's going on? This is bad news." But you, as the leader, have to keep that long-term vision, saying, "No, this is just part. I have to double down on those who aren't churning and keep pushing forward." I love that.
And no matter how you explain it, someone will not understand
it. Internally and externally. Yeah. Wow. Looking forward, going into 2021, what do you see challenges that you're going to need to overcome in today's environment? I don't know if COVID's really affecting you at all. It probably isn't. But what's coming up?
So we had I think everyone was somehow affected by COVID except Zoom and some other guys, but someone was like somehow affected. It's not, we're working with companies like in 30 different industries. So some of these industries were affected. And we have been extremely empathetic with them. It's obvious that these guys, there's no way, they can go through this without help. So we are here to help them. And that this means that, many initiatives that we had planned and so on couldn't move forward at that time. But it's okay. I think that the biggest challenges in 2021, for us, it's all about, finding the right people and continue to do things that we are doing now. And probably at the end of this period, we'll have to raise funds again. And when that happens, be ready for that, right? So it is this growth. And I think the biggest challenge here is like, it's what I said before, like making sure that you have the right people in your team, right? The moment, if they have the right people, they know how to do it, they know how to play. That's it, right? And they have done it before. And this is also something that startups tend to fail on, that they try to, at some point, hire cheap. And just because you don't have the money, which makes a lot of sense. But it kind of like works the other way. You have less time than money. So when you have to hire people, you have less time than money because you probably have raised funds, but you have a limit on the time where you have to prove, results. So I think the challenge is always in the people side here. Technology is working great. The actual team we have is doing great. The market is out there. It's ready. It's growing. So everything looks cool. So it's all about execution and growing this team and keep executing and keep these values and this culture the way it is. I think this is the biggest challenge now. I believe in that.
Growing as a leader and growing the business, what books, audiobooks, podcasts have you read in the past, would recommend, or currently reading or listening to?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few books here. I try to read everything that I can. If there are books that I really like, there's this book like Play Bigger, talking about how to create categories and how to create your own category and differentiate. It's not a very tactical book, not for the day to day, but it kind of like helps understand what is this about, right? And a book that I enjoyed recently was The Hard Thing About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz. I think every CEO at some point should read that book. Kind of like, what is happening to you? It's normal. Don't worry. I think it's like a very interesting book, and yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to go down to the tactics, Predictable Revenue is a great book, even if it's it's been like we've built a lot on top of this, right? Then I also follow the guys at Winning by Design. Jacko is doing a great job showing entrepreneurs how to organize, and I like the formula because it's like in between all this craziness, there is a lot of insight. And that is something that I really like a lot. And it's like, you can always go back and say, yeah, I know what he's explaining me, but there's always something in there. It's like, yeah, that is what I forgot about. Right? Now I can go back and say, hey guys, we forgot about this. We have to rethink this. You remember that? Oh yeah. Because we also tend to forget things, right? We tend to forget things that we learned before just because, we learn, but then, you always have to revisit this thing. So yeah, I like this. I like this channel. That's a pretty good one. Yeah. And SaaStr, obviously SaaStr is like the top one for SaaS companies and SaaS founders. Like the content is very valuable. Yeah.
Last question for you, Pere. What kind of technology innovations do you predict we'll see in the near term, next year or so, and long term, 5-10 years from now?
I don't like this. I hope we get to Mars soon. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see us going to Mars. I think AI is gonna make a big change. It's gonna change everyone's life more than the virus or anything else, right? I think we face what we are facing with the virus because we don't have enough artificial intelligence yet. And if we had these systems in place and already developed, we could use that power to actually identify or actually be able to control this pandemic even better. So I think that's going to make a big difference. We don't even imagine how powerful can these additional brains be, right? And even if they are completely different and they are totally complementary to humans, right? I think we're going to see this. I believe in electric cars and in electric. I believe that we're not going to own cars anymore. The moment we can get closer to each other again, because it's not going to be necessary when they are self-driven. I know it's hard to say, but I believe that we're not going to own cars. We may have a special rides on a car, but we're not going to own the car. And I think it's going to be like the software revolution is just starting, and the way the software can change our lives, you cannot even imagine it.
Pere, thank you so much for sharing your insights, both of the journey that you've been on and what you are building. I'm very excited to see where you go next.
All right. Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for check out Kompyte. That's with a K, KOMPYTE.com, and you can see more about their product and sign up. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, our sponsor for today's episode is TerraLeap. So if your company wants to learn how to better leverage the power of video, increase your sales and marketing, head over to TerraLeap.io. We'll see you guys next time. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to UpTechReport.com and let us know.